Yo, 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 yo. Yo. What is up? Wizard gang, what is up? Fellow wizards. Uh, Admittedly, I woke up today and I thought to myself, I don't know if I fully comprehend mastering. On last night, I studied for many hours. 6 to be exact. Well, 5.5 actually, but who's counting? Me. Because it's speedrun and it matters. So basically, what I realized is I was lying to myself. I didn't fully freaking hold on. Oh, that was good. I didn't fully comprehend what the freaking heck. I didn't fully comprehend mastery. This is as far as I've gotten, right? And this is a lot of progress. I'm like 90% of the way there. But I don't have a good enough grasp on the types of plugins I could be using. Because here's my issue. And this is what we're gonna find. let's type out some goals for this stream. What are my goals for today? Goals for today. I'll just put my goals in general. Understand phase relationship reading. Mono and stereo. I feel like you don't fully understand that. Understanding compression times on master limiter. So attack, decay, sustain, release. Why is my master quiet, but it is hitting -14 whoops and -1 true. Why do mastering engineers break these rules? What to do with stereo bass? The interesting word I learned yesterday was ballistics. And I know that word in regards to like military and stuff, guns. But when it comes to compression, I didn't realize that ballistics is a term that's used in compression to talk about how fast the compression is happening. Where is it? Somewhere over here. Ballistics. Let me gotta highlight this. You know what the irony is? Is I went to college. I got my bachelor's degree in audio engineering. Like, I should know this stuff. But it wasn't taught to me Isn't that ironic? Come here, Katie. Most of the learning that I've done surrounding audio, just in general, has been through either me personally learning it or like a friend teaching me, which is why I always teach all my friends. Um, because it's like it's an amazing way of like giving back to the world because then that person can just go make music for the rest of their life, and that's like a big reason why I'm also doing these videos too. Because it's like I don't know if I understand. Maybe I need to fully understand the signal flow of my computer and then the listening. Now, I think this will be interesting because what I'm asking is, what is the signal flow and compression that all happens from start of recording in DAW all the way to playing a song off my phone from Spotify after upload? So I think this is important for me to truly understand this because I don't really understand every single layer of compression that's happening. It seems like there's so many, right? Because you have the real sound getting compressed into digital information, then the digital information of the track being compressed into the master, right? And then the master being compressed into like a lower bit depth or like a file format. Um, and then after that, well, even before that, right? It's going through some kind of audio codecs in the DAW. See, there's like it's so hard to like mentally after the DAW goes through like DistroKid or whatever it is. Yeah, right? DistroKid, then Spotify, then Apple, then you yeah, it's like there's so many layers between that. Your raw audio is captured at full resolution, typically 24-bit wave with no lossy compression. Okay. So it goes from 24-bit. Your mix bus may include compression. This is your mix. This then goes to mastering. Mastering stays turned off. Right? Upload distributor. You. Okay, so through the distributor, right? Okay. That was right. That makes sense. Okay. Spotify's processing encoding plus a normalization. So yeah, so these are the different codecs, right? The playback engine. This is dependent on your membership level, I believe. Dude, this fly's been harassing me for like 3 days. I'll find it.
In this video, I'm going to give you an extremely simple mastering chain that works.
Okay. YouTube. Bring me to YouTube. Bring me to YouTube. Okay.
What if there was a song about Lost in Translation in the style of
Okay. I want to be in the yes. This is where I need to be. I need to be at the College of Winterwood Library. This is the perfect video, dude. This video is what aesthetically represents this stream right now. Okay, so for like with Spotify, like because it has these different settings, maybe it'd be cool if there was a plugin that allows you to switch between these different qualities and see what it sounds like. Wow, it really does just compress it for you. Right, we get this. I find this article to be very condescending. So I'm trying to think of like what the best strategy is. So is the best strategy to make something where it's you just like the way it sounds, as far as the mix and the master go, or is it the strategy to try to curate your master to these streaming services? Because these streaming services aren't going to be here forever, but your music is. So, what's the best strat? You know what I mean? Ba ba da ba. Streaming platform. Let's see how AI answers this. How would you answer this? Hmm. Okay, so Chad, here's the issue I'm running into. Here's the issue I'm running into, right? So, if it almost feels like I've learned so much and nothing at all. Like, let's see what it says. There's no single perfect mastering chain for pop music, but there is a perfect structure. Okay. Perfect pop mastering chain is the chain used by top mastering engineers because it hits the three notes of pop. Loud, clean, punching, wide, screaming, proof. Okay. Linear high phase. Linear phase high pass filter. It's interesting. This keeps returning as the same thing on the number one for all these mastering chain is a linear EQ. That's so interesting. Okay. 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 Interesting. So putting the multi-band compressor after the saturator. A tone shaping EQ. Studying screws. I'm studying screws. Tone shaping EQ, final sweetening. Add shine, air, clarity. Clipper, transient shaping, plus loudness. Shave peaks before limiter. That's what we learned yesterday from the dude. Limiter number one. Catch fast transients before the final. You know, as unfortunate as it is, I can totally see why AI limiting is a bug. AI limiting makes sense because I don't even think you'd need AI to do it. You could just use a computer automation to do this because these are all just like numbers. This is just computer language right here, like all this stuff. I can totally understand why Ozone has existed for as long as it has, because this is all just like, oh, you're meeting specific metrics. Just have the computer do it. But I can understand why there's also a lot of textural nuance that you can get from doing it yourself. Like with the saturation specifically, you can probably do a lot of like cool, like you can make, you know, something sound old or something sound new. Like I think that's a big thing that a lot of people sleep on with like mastering, is like how you can really shape the vibe of the song via it. Make one with all the best UAD waves or isotope or any other plugin. Yeah, it's just AI do cup of water. Okay. Okay, that checks out. Why is EQ1 soft, dude? Never heard of it. Yeah. I've never heard of it. DMG. Hmm. Okay. Okay, I have the Shadow Hills. Waves API 250? What the hell is that? UAD Apex ATR 102. Ampex. I've been using the Studer whole time. I didn't know there was something called an Ampex that was a little bit better. It's interesting.
the fuck's Pro MD? Oh, multiband.
Dude, these flies, they want my bev. I ain't giving them the bev. Never, never, never. Two kitties hanging out. Proto C6. F9, I don't know that F5. These fucking flies want my bev, bro. It's not fair. Get away from my bev. This is what I get for fucking working on my porch. UID massive passive. What the fuck is that? Massive. I thought I got a massive passive. Anyways. Kitties. Hold on a sec. I gotta go get this cat. Okay, and we're back. And I'm back. And we're back. Ah. Alright. I'm back. I'm ready to lock in. What the freak is a massive passive? What the freaking heck is a massive passive? The cool thing about mastering is if you get really fucking good at it, you can make a lot of money doing it. Mastering engineers are some of the most, I mean, the good ones are some of the most well-paid people for the amount of work that they do. Oh, what the fuck? I'm just like straight up just copying. I don't know what the fuck a pull tech is. What the fuck am I doing? Okay, loud, natural. Standard clip? I don't know what the fuck standard clip is. It's the industry standard? Interesting. I mean, like, makes sense. Karzak K clip and G clip. Okay. I'd be curious to see if there's like people who've like designed really good free limiter chains. Just everything's free. The fuck is Wise MM-1? Oh, okay, so LA2A isn't good for final loudness. I'm thinking about buying some drums so I can start drumming. You know what I mean? Do something of the sorts like that. Maybe. Okay, so we need something that's gonna get our true peak. I guess Pro Filter Pro L2 true peak mode. I didn't even know there was a true peak mode. See there, I'm learning so much. Learning so much. See, this is what I think AI should be actually used for. It's just learning. But, you know, obviously not using it as Bible. Still using human being sources as well and shit. But, I mean, it's just like the speed of flow of information that you can get from it is just a lot faster. Interesting. Is glue just a feeling in audio, or is it a mathematical equation? Glue. Shared gain reduction across multiple elements. Glue happens because of shared gain reduction across multiple elements. When a compressor is on a mix bus, kick hits, compressor reduces gain, bass hits. Okay. All the instruments breed together because they're all triggering the same detector circuit. This creates correlated gain reduction. Everything moves up and down together. This is literally a mathematical correlation between signals. Envelope shaping. Attack, release time shape the transients of the entire mix. Okay. But wouldn't okay, so like this is just maybe this is just my thinking, right? But if all elements are going on at once and they're hitting the same threshold and triggering the same detector, wouldn't that be irrelevant to? Wouldn't that just be viewed as noise by the detector? It wouldn't be necessarily as like. It would just be opening the gate or just leaving it open or whatever, right? Okay. SSL-G bus is famous for its glue. Optical discrete dual stage compression adds weight plus cohesion. API 2500. So glue is this shared dynamic movement. These are the settings almost every pro uses. Ratio. How do I calculate the exact attack and decay times I need to be using for my compressors and limiters in my master? It's gonna say some bullshit like, it's all about your taste,
But you gotta use a delaying calculator.
look ahead is effectively your transient control. Look ahead is 1 millisecond. This keeps it clean, but still it's a bit of transient. Okay, yeah, like. I don't even really know what look ahead is. Look ahead is one of the most important and misunderstood controls in a limiter. Once you understand it, okay, I get it. I hate that AI does that. It gives you a little intro. It's just like unnecessary. What look ahead actually is. Look ahead is the limiter's ability to see into the future by delaying the audio slightly. Huh? So it can react before a peak happens. Mathematically, the limiter delays the audio by X milliseconds. It analyzes the incoming waveform. It predicts peaks. It applies gain reduction. So it's just like the attack? How far before the peak the limiter can see it's coming? Oh, okay, so you're literally just delaying the whole shebang. So is it delaying the entire project? Or just the... Hey, play back. Don't let your love start slipping. Love start slipping away. Don't let your love start slipping. Love start slipping away. Okay. There's a wasp flying around me right now. He looks pretty badass. Oh, I think he's coming near. I must remain calm, for he is a fellow pollinator and a protector of the environment. And it's not an imitation wasp, it is a full-blown wasp. That thing's got the full body. Yeah, and now it's gone. You know, the interesting thing about wasps is that a lot of people think that they're... Ooh. That's a fucking fly. A lot of people think that wasps are bad, and they're actually really good for the environment. They pollinate. Just gotta leave them. My lunch. Okay. It's okay. Hold on. I'll be back. Yeah. I'm back. I thought I had a tick on my neck, so had to address that real quick. But we good. Don't think I had a tick on my neck. I think it was just a bug bite. But I used a med kit, so it's cool. We chillin'. Dude, my allergies, I'm sorry. Like, chat, you don't understand how bad my allergies are. It's bad. But, I'm like... Okay. Yeah, I feel like this guy's gonna answer my question.
USA's Safe Pilot rewards safe drivers with up to 30% off your auto insurance premium at renewal.
Hey, Dad.
One thing I hear from a lot of people who are just starting in music production is that Spotify told me that the master needs to be negative 14 LUFS or LUFS. And the big misconception is yes, Spotify is going to turn the master down to negative 14 LUFS. But if your master is mastered at that, I can guarantee it's going to sound significantly lower than every other song on Spotify that was mastered professionally. And if you take a quick look at the list of these top 20 songs that are currently hot on the charts right now, you'll notice that the lowest one is negative 9.5 LUFS, where some of the other ones are up to negative 6 LUFS. So all songs are still being mastered extremely loud. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is the producer wants to make their song as loud as possible, so they send it to the mixer loud. The mixer wants it to be a little bit louder, so it sounds bigger when they send it back to the producers and A&R, so they make it a little bit louder. And then finally, the master engineer needs to make it sound a little louder, so he makes it louder. So part of the problem is that, and the other part of it is that limited music is what we're all used to listening to, at least when we're talking about top 40 music, right? That limited sound is part of the sound of music, very forward in your face music. So in today's video, I want to show you 4 different ways to make your mix and master louder so that it can compete in the market that we're currently in. And if you don't want to do any of this on your own and would like my help, make sure to check me out at mixandmastermysong.com. I'm currently offering unlimited revisions to first-time clients. Let's go. Okay, so first things first. The reason why you probably can't get your mix and master loud enough, 99.9% of the time has to do with the kick and the bass and the low end frequencies. That is where all the voltage is taken up, and that is what is going to get distorted first when you put a limiter on or something like that. We got this song that I worked on a while ago. These are just the stems from this artist Who Killed Kenny called Glad I Spent It. Make sure to check him out. I got 1 bar looped here because I always find that's a good way just to hear the loudness, and when you're setting certain parameters that we're going to be using today, it's a good way just to hear what you're actually doing. Now, if I just play this without doing anything, we're at about negative 14, negative 15 LUFS without any limiter or anything on it. Let me just play this again. Yeah, so like negative 15 LUFS. Now, I did this just for an example. I put this Pro L, and this is what a lot of maybe new people would do, is they get their mix done and they just throw a limiter on it and make it negative 8 LUFS or whatever. And that's what I did. I put this on, ended up having to turn up the gain 9 dB in order to achieve around negative 8. But I also turned the output down 9 dB so we can hear the difference of what the limiter's doing without actual loudness difference. So let me play this loop again and then I'll turn it on. Care about him. She don't got no game. She don't know how to get no bread out of him. He ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game. She don't know how to get no bread out of him. He ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game. She don't know how to get. So what happens is the whole mix just folds in. The kick and bass kind of go away. It gets very small sounding. There's distortion happening, and so that's what happens when you just throw a limiter on and you don't take these things into consideration throughout the mix and the master. So now let's take a look at the waveform. And what I want to show you is once we take the kick and the bass out of the equation, how small the waveform gets, just as a starting point for us.
Care about him. She don't got no game. She don't know how to get no bread out of him. You ain't have fun. You don't even care about him. She don't got no game. She don't know how to get no bread out of him.
So that should show you that yes, it is the kick and the bass that is taking up all our headroom and the reason why the limiter has to work so hard to make it louder. So what can we do about the kick and the bass in order to not make the limiter work so hard when we get to the final master? And that brings us to tip number 1. You have to have a good balance. Now, a lot of times people just want so much bass, and maybe that's a part of the sound, but having a good balance will make it so the limiter doesn't have to work that hard. Let's just play this for a minute and play with our bass and kick relationship.
You ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him. You ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him. You ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him. You ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him. You ain't have fun, you don't even care about him. She don't got no game.
And so you saw the waveform might have gotten just a little bit smaller by the way we move the faders. And sometimes you saw what I did is I pulled the bass all the way down and then slowly brought it back in. That's a good way, just using faders, to really get a gauge of level of what you want it to be. Just bring it up until you hear it and feel it the way you want to. And that should be a good way to get your original balance down. And this will help a long way as we get to the final master of not having to make the limiter work too hard. Now that we got the boring tip out of the way, which is probably the most important, which is your level, let's move on to tip number 2. This is something I do all the time with hip hop and pop music that has a lot of heavy drums, a lot of heavy bass, and that is sidechain the bass to the kick. And I don't just blindly sidechain it, I'll use Soothe 2, which we'll show you in a minute, to just pull out the frequency that the kick and the bass are both taking up. And what this will do is it'll allow you to really still hear a lot of the bass information, but pulling down the frequency that the kick is taking up. And this will free up a whole lot of headroom in the final master. So this is what I do. I take the bass, and these are settings I got. It's called JJ Bass. I actually stole this from Jason Joshua. And when I play it, you'll see it's sidechained to the kick. And depending on what DAW you're in, you can do that however way you need to do it, but this is how I do it in Studio One. And when I play it, so you can see what happened is when you hit play, just the low end section around that 63 hertz area is being pulled down, but you're still hearing the bass just fine. Let me bypass this so you can hear the difference between the two. So you're still hearing the bass pretty clearly. There's a little bit of the low end that you're missing, and you can adjust how much you want of that, and different songs will dictate different things. But watch the waveform now with it off, and then you'll see with it on, you'll see that we get more headroom. Well, I was trying to put the line there so you could see it. We've got more headroom just by doing that. So that's tip number 2. Sidechain the bass so when the kick hits, that frequency will get out of the way in the bass and it will give you more headroom in the end. All right, so tip number 3, we're gonna talk about clippers. Now, a lot of people use a clipper on their master bus before their limiter, which I do too, to get a little bit extra headroom and just clip off some of the tops of the transients. Now, that's a great way to do things, but I also like to clip on the kick, snare, and bass subgroup. So I'll take all my drums and bass and put it to a bus and then clip that. The reason why is because why should I clip the whole master when really, as we saw earlier in the video, all of the transient information that's gonna kill the limiter is coming from those instruments. So for that, I like to use any clipper works. I've been using this one from Newfangled Audio a lot called Saturate. And what I'm gonna do is just clip it about a dB here, right? And you'll notice that we don't hear much difference, but we're gonna gain more headroom again. So we've gained more headroom already from the side chaining. Now we're gonna gain another bit of headroom from doing the clipping here. So as you can see, we're stacking different ways to get louder as we go on in the mix. So check this out. This is with it and then without it. So as you can see, once again, the waveform got a little bit smaller, so we're moving in steps here. And I like to use this in auto mode so that the loudness isn't affected so much. Part limiting, and I just put the drive off, taking, like I said, about the dB off. Anything more can sometimes work, and just use your ears, sometimes cranking the drive all the way up and then slowly bringing it back till you're really not hearing the difference. Constantly using bypass and staying in the loop, that's really important to do until it sounds not that different. Now, as we bypassed it, you could tell a little difference, a little transient's missing, but with the whole mix going, you're not going to notice that much, and it's going to make the final sound so much better. All right, on tip 4. So we've signed it a little bit on the bass and kick section. Now we need a little bit more clipper on the final mix, but this with any like little strays, snares, vocal pieces that might be taking up a little bit of headroom that we could get back. I'm going to use standard clips for this. This is one of my favorites for the final master. And I'm just going to pull the clipper down until it starts distorting and sounding terrible. All right, so that works pretty well. You're not hearing dramatic bypass. So we've clipped a little bit, and now more so for tip number 4 is to use multiple limiters. So what we do, we'll put a fab filter throw out, and we're just throwing limiters on here. We're not gonna get super technical, but just take off a little bit. Just take off about a dB, and let's close this waveform out. And bring up my.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was gonna help me focus.
Just so we can see where our
I think I need to make it quieter.
This is the game changer that everybody has been asking for.
So basically this big button right here in the middle is to generate chords. So let's just go ahead and press it.
What is the messaging of this song? I feel like I don't like the messaging. Oh my god. And why'd they make me piss color?
All right, so I like to just take off a couple of dB on the first limiter, and you notice just with that and just only a couple dB off, we're already at like almost -10 LUFS, well, -11 LUFS there. Whereas before, you noticed if we had just that limiter on from the beginning, it was like 9 dB of reduction just to get to 8. So already with all those moves we've made, we're getting closer to making this master louder without distortion and making it sound terrible. So we got one L2, let's put another one. Usually I probably use a couple different limiters, but like I said, we're making this really simple. And let's see if we can get this a bit louder.
Dude, why do you have to use such a bad song?
He had fun, young, didn't care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him. He had fun, young, didn't care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him. He had fun, young, didn't care about him. She don't got no game, she don't know how to get no bread out of him.
All right, so as you can see, we're almost to -8 LUFS, -9.5, which actually is fine for hip hop sometimes. If you saw when I showed you that list of tracks, that new Chris Brown record is -9.5. And I'm sure if we actually went through the mix a bit better on this track and worked a bit more on the kick and bass relationship, we could get this a little bit louder. All right, so hopefully going through all those steps, you've noticed that by doing all those little steps, we've been able to get this master quite a bit louder than originally was, and not sounding so distorted and falling apart like if you just used one limiter. Let me know if you have any questions about the techniques in the comments below, and if you need your songs mixed and or mastered, hit me up at mixandmastermysong.com. Talk to you guys soon.
still don't understand it. I might need to replay that.
One thing I hear from a lot of people who are just starting in music production is that Spotify told me that the master needs.
My computer not working. My computer not working. I always listen.
Delivering quiet -14 tracks to Spotify. If you want to stand out on the Spotify platform and other streaming services, you've probably been told that you need to deliver masters at -14 LUFS. Because Spotify turn everything down to -14 LUFS, so you've been told. So it doesn't matter, does it? However, all major record labels and independent artists always ask me to master it to -8 LUFS. And this is because Spotify only turns it down to -14 LUFS on your phone, or like me, if you have the normalized volume setting turned off. Yes, the listener can turn it up, but hey, your track just fell flat because it was much lower than the -8. Game over, you just lost. Stop delivering quiet -14 tracks to Spotify. If you want to stand out on the Spotify platform and other streaming services, you've probably been told that you need to deliver masters at -14 LUFS. Because Spotify turn everything down to -14 LUFS, so you've been told. So it doesn't matter, does it? However, all major record labels and independent artists always ask me to master it to -8 LUFS. And this is because Spotify only turns it down to -14 LUFS on your phone, or like me, if you have the normalized volume setting turned off. Yes, the listener can turn it up, but hey, your track just fell flat because it was much lower than the -8. Game over, you just lost. Stop delivering quiet -14 tracks to Spotify. If you want to stand out on the Spotify platform and
So why is AI saying -14, and then all these guys are saying -7?
But then he tells me this. But then he says this.
Let's talk about loudness again. I'm seeing a lot of confusion and misinformation on the internet, and I just want to clear up a few things around loudness because actually things have become so easy and simple nowadays. So let's talk about it. Alright, so I'm assuming that you already know what loudness is. Loudness is basically how loud somebody is perceiving your track, and the way to increase it is to limit your dynamic range, and the way to decrease it is by improving your dynamic range. So more dynamic range, less loud perception, less dynamic range, more loud perception. And the way that we measure loudness is in LUFS. LUFS stands for loudness units on full scale. You can immediately forget that as long as you know that LUFS says something valuable about loudness. Now, why should you actually care about loudness? Well, I think you should care about it because it might give you some interesting opportunities. But honestly, if you don't care about it at all, you probably will be fine. Probably. Because the thing is, streaming services like Spotify, but also other ones, want to give their listeners the best user experience. And one of the things they're doing in order to achieve that is making sure that all songs play back at the same volume. So if somebody is listening to a playlist of songs or whatever, they don't have to constantly change the volume because everything sounds at the same loudness, even though a few tracks are less loud than others. And the way that they're doing this is by using loudness normalization. And if you want to know how the loudness normalization works, there are actually articles about that. There's an article from Spotify about this, which we'll talk about in a minute. And another interesting paper to read is the AES TD 1008.1.21-9. But if you Google on TD 1008, you get to this paper. Now, this paper looks very boring and very flat and whatever, but it's actually a very interesting read, and I think they did a great job on writing a paper that's actually understandable for everybody. Now, what the TD 1008 basically is a recommendation to all the streaming services on how to handle loudness. And with TD 1008, they hope to have the same standards across all streaming services. And we are slowly getting there. Now, when it comes to Spotify and basically most other streaming services, what they do is they will adjust your tracks to -14 dB LUFS. They don't have to say dB here, by the way. It's not dB, it's LUFS. What this means is that if your track is louder than -14 LUFS, they will apply negative gain. And negative gain is simply a volume control, same as the volume control on a consumer's device. If the track is softer than -14 LUFS, they will apply positive gain. And they will do that until it peaks at -1 dB true peak. We'll talk about -1 dB true peak in a second, but they will increase the volume as much as possible, basically normalizing it. However, if your track is -20 LUFS and the true peak is -5 dB, they can only lift it up for 4 dB, so you end up with -16 LUFS and sounding less loud than other artists on the platform. So, what does this mean in practice? Well, let's just take a look at the track that I have over here. I have a simple loudness meter here. If you have an R128 or LUFS meter, they all function in the same way, so you can do your measurement yourself. These meters are included in limiters, in metering plugins. You can find them basically everywhere. Now let's measure the track that I have over here, and the way to measure it is by playing back the whole track. The streaming services take what is called an integrated measurement, which is an average measurement from the beginning till the end of the track. And the integrated value is what you should care about when it comes to what the streaming service is going to do with your song. What is also good to know is that albums are oftentimes handled different from single tracks. Streaming services measure the average loudness over the whole album for when users play back the album in the way it's meant to be played back, so starting at song 1 and ending at the last song. In that case, the whole album is being normalized, and the volume differences between your individual tracks are the way that you intended them to be. And this is great for when you have songs that connect together. A good example is the Pink Floyd The Wall album, for instance. Like, the songs never really end, it's all connected. However, if an album track is being played back in a playlist, then it will be just normalized as a single track, because then it's at the equal volume of that playlist. And I think they're handling it so well that you don't really have to worry about it. And now that I've played the full track to it, we can see here that we have a -10.6 LUFS loudness. So this means we are a bit louder than Spotify would play us back. Now, the biggest question that I see on the internet is if this is a problem. And honestly, it's not, because this is what Spotify is going to do. I'm going to do it here. I'm just going to turn down the output gain. And the cool thing about this Sonable plugin is that it instantly shows what will happen with your measurements. So this is what Spotify is going to do. It is going to turn it down by 3.4 decibels. And that's all. It's no problem at all. You just have to be aware of it, because one of the things that is happening now is that our true peak value is -3.5 decibels. Now, as said, Spotify wants a -1 dB true peak file, so we still have 2.5 decibels of peak range that we haven't used. So what we could, but not necessarily have to do, but what we could do is use this range for a bit more dynamic song. And this is where I think the interesting discussions start, because the fact that Spotify is normalizing everything at -14 LUFS doesn't mean that you have to export your track at -14 LUFS, because there's way more to it than just this number. When you look at, for instance, electronic music, limiting and reducing the dynamic range is actually part of the sound. I've seen songs mastered at -5 LUFS that have way more impact than mastered at -14 LUFS played back at the same loudness volume. And this is where we get from science to creativity, because choosing for a loud track can still be a creative decision. And I think this is a part that is often forgotten in a lot of information about loudness, including in my own videos, by the way, because I sometimes also forget to mention this part. So when you are mastering your track and are aiming for a LUFS value, always think about, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because my ears are saying that this sounds better? Or are you doing it to be louder than the competition? Because that's not gonna happen these days anymore. Back in the days it was really easy. Just master yourself louder than all the other ones out there and you would stand out between your competition or colleagues or however you want to call it. But nowadays, loudness is just a creative decision. If you make an amazing track at -4 LUFS, I'm not gonna shout at you. But if you need the headroom to make a very nice jazz type of recording, then use it, because it is available. And whatever you choose, just let Spotify handle the whole leveling of the track. We got pissed back in the days when we were watching a television program and then the commercial break all of a sudden came in way louder than the program that we were watching. That was very annoying. And the same goes for people that are listening to music at -14 LUFS. Imagine what would happen if there would be a track in there that all of a sudden is way louder. That's super annoying, definitely, when the track is over and the next track comes in, which is back at -14 LUFS again. Now, another simple thing that Spotify is asking for is a -1 dB or -2 dB true peak file. What I often see mentioned is that you should use all your headroom all the way up to 0 dB for reasons. And I do agree with the fact that you should use headroom. What I just did in my demo is not the smartest thing, because what I basically did is I normalized the track for Spotify, but with that I've been giving away 2.5 decibels of headroom if you count in the -1 dB true peak. I would always let my track speak at the highest value, because that basically gives the best signal to noise ratio. I gotta say that noise these days is not a huge issue anymore, but still, the neatest way of doing it is by always letting your signal peak at the highest level it is allowed to peak. And that is -1 dB true peak if your master is around the 14 integrated LUFS, and -2 dB true peak for masters that are louder than 14 LUFS. And the reason they're asking for this is because louder tracks are more susceptible to extra distortion in the transcoding process. So what is going to happen when you send your track to a streaming service is that they are going to transcode it into different codecs in order to have a lower data rate for streaming it to phones or something else. And what a codec does is, in the encoding and most of all in the decoding process, it tends to overshoot a little bit. And the less dynamic range there is in your track, the bigger the chance is that you get these overshoots. So if your track is speaking at 0 dB, there's no room to overshoot, because above 0 dB, nothing exists. It's basically a clipping signal. And if you have a -1 dB or -2 dB true peak file, there is still room available available for these peaks to land, which in theory means a less distorted sound. Now, I always think that if a service is asking for a certain file, you should better just deliver it in such a way. Same way as I'm delivering this file to YouTube in a certain amount of pixels and a certain codec, a certain way that the audio needs to be encoded into it. But the confusion with Spotify mostly is that it rarely happens that there are actually audible artifacts from tracks that are mastered at 0 dB true peak. This -1 dB true peak or -2 dB true peak requirement seems to be not that big of a deal. So I don't think you should worry about it too much. However, if you are soon going to release a record that is probably going to be listened to by a lot of listeners, and you've probably been planning on releasing that track for weeks or months and put a lot of money in marketing and whatever. If the track then comes on Spotify and it has these distortion artifacts, it's a bit of a bummer. So I wouldn't take the risk and just deliver it at -1 dB true peak, because what difference does it make? I don't know if there's any discussion subjects in here, because I don't think there will be any differences, and there will only be way less chances of distortion artifacts. So I do this with all the masters that I send to my clients. And so summing up and concluding this tutorial on loudness and all this information on loudness, you're gonna be absolutely fine as long as your track is above -14 LUFS. Definitely when you did it as a creative decision. Now, if you're trying to compete with your colleague musicians, a better way to stand out is by just making different, better, more unique music. Not by trying to make your track louder, because that has basically become impossible. They will almost always correct you on most of the streaming services, at least the important ones. And if you want to make sure that there will be no distortion artifacts, deliver your track at -1 or -2 dB true peak, depending on how loud your track is. If your track is really loud, really pumped up, I would say go for -2 dB true peak. And that's it. If you like my videos, consider using my affiliate links, Tomon, Sweetwater, and Plugin Boutique. I'll link them in the description down below. If you want to purchase something in one of these shops, first scan the QR or click on the link and then make your purchase, because that way a little bit of your purchase gets kicked back to me. Another way to support me is by becoming a channel member. You can do that starting at 99 cents per month, which gives you a little...
Some say that you should master your music at -6 dB integrated LUFS. And others are saying that you should master your music at -14 decibels LUFS. Today we're going to look into this. We're going to go to the global charts and we're going to see what are the pros doing. Today I'm going to talk about a very controversial subject, and that is LUFS loudness when it comes to mastering. Let me give you a little bit of history about how we got to this point. You know, back in the day, people used to record their music, then they would mix it, and then they'd put it onto a master, like a 1/4-inch tape, and then they would send that off to radio stations or to be pressed for albums, for vinyls, and then later on cassette and CDs. But what started to happen is people started to notice that if they took that final mix, the 2-channel 1/4-inch master, if you ran it through a compressor with a little bit of EQ and you put a limiter on it, then your song would land up sounding louder on radio than your competition song. And then we got what we call today the loudness wars. 1979, the average was -20, but if we go to 2009, the average was -8. From -20 dBs to -8 is a 12 decibel change. That's one hell of a big difference in level. If you play something from 1975 at the same volume as something from 2009, you will see that the difference is going to be massive. This started a loudness war. Through the decades, from the 1970s until 2010, that's a period of 40 years, sound engineers just got better and better and better and better at making songs louder and louder and louder and louder. When I used to produce a lot of jingles, I remember the one day I did this piece of music for a BMW commercial, and they told me it was going to be on during the news, and I watched the news, I was eating my dinner, and then an ad came on, and the music sounded loud and big and powerful, and then my ad came on, my music, and it sounded soft and limp, and then the next ad came in and it was loud again. The reason was my mastering wasn't up to scratch. That was when I was still learning, like 25 years ago when I started. The same thing is happening on radio. So if you write a pop song, you want to get into the charts, if you didn't have your song mixed and mastered loud as possible, your song would sound softer than the other songs on the radio. What eventually happened is, by the year 2010, music got so squashed and so flat that what started to happen is the quality of music really started to suffer. It started to also cause huge problems with broadcasters, because TV, radio, cinema, all these guys, they started having problems where, I don't know if you've ever had this, you're watching a TV show and you're listening to the dialogue and you get the level right for the dialogue in the TV show, and then an ad comes on and bang, it's so loud, and you're like, holy crap, why is it so loud? So the TV guys and the radio guys and all these guys started saying, look, we need to have a new standard, a standard that doesn't set the songs by the peak, but by the loudness. So they created a new standard called LUFS, LUFS, and then now these days they measure songs by the loudness of the song, not by the peaks. So if a song is, say, -6 LUFS loudness and another song is -14 LUFS loudness, they will bring the -6 LUFS loudness song down to -14. What most of the guys did, YouTube and Apple Music and Spotify, is they set a certain level of LUFS loudness, and what they do is their algorithms normalize. They lift the songs up or bring them down to -14 LUFS. Now, what this has done is it's caused sound engineers and mixing guys and mastering guys, and when I say this, I don't mean the professionals. I'm talking about your bedroom kind of B-grade amateur mixers and mastering engineers, to say, okay, well then we must aim for -14 decibel LUFS loudness. It's not as simple as that. People
Damn, he roasted me.
Even wrote articles and blog posts where they said the loudness war is now over because YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music are normalizing loudness. But that is not what we are seeing when it comes to the charts. So if you Google loudness, this is the top page that comes up, Sage Audio. This is what he says. The quick answer, the best mastering level for streaming is an integrated -14 LUFS, as it best fits the loudness normalization settings of the majority of streaming services. -14 LUFS is the best mastering level when considering loudness. And that is total BS. This is a professional. This is a guy who mixes and masters people's music and charges them money. And I say shame on you for teaching the wrong information and delivering the wrong service to your clients. Because let me tell you, that's not what the pros are doing. And I'm going to prove that in a moment. This is another site that comes up in the top 10 sites for LUFS loudness on Google. And you look here, step 4, they're talking about mastering. Now onto the crucial part, the LUFS meter. Our track's short reading, about 3-second window, doesn't tickle the meter, hovering between -15 and -13 LUFS. This level is actually ideal. Look at that. And would lead the track to sales through any streaming checks quiet and unharmed. Again, I'm sorry to say, wrong advice. Shame on you. This is the problem, is the blind leading the blind. It's a minefield out there. If you're trying to learn about music production, you go on the internet, you go onto YouTube or Google, you go to blog posts, you go to forums, it's full of this myth about mix.
Dude, this guy has just been doing 90% roasting and like 2% information. Like, yo, what's up? Yeah, bro, I'm playing Roblox. I'm trying to survive on the raft for 100 days. And also I'm trying to master.
Mixing and mastering for -14 dBs LUFS. Let's put this to bed once and for all. Let's go and look at the charts and let's measure the LUFS loudness of the top 10 songs. And let's see, what are the pros doing? No more opinions, we're just looking for facts. If the pros do it, we're going to do it. Last year, during the Grammys, Isotope, which is actually makes some of the best mastering software you can get, they did an article called Records of the Year, an analysis of the 2021 Grammy nominees. And these are all the albums that they looked at. They analyzed the songs, they looked at the EQ curves, they looked at a whole lot, but they also looked at the LUFS integrated loudness. So let's start here. Beyonce, Black Parade, -8.5 LUFS. Notice it's not -14. That's mastered by Colin Leonard, one of the top mastering engineers in the world. Why is Colin not mastering the song at -14? Let me ask you that. Next song, Black Pumas, Colors. And what is the integrated loudness? -9.9 LUFS. Notice it's 4 decibels louder than it supposedly needs to be. Why are the pros mixing and mastering the music louder than what everybody in their bedrooms and B-grade producers are saying? Next song, Da Baby, and what's the integrated loudness? -8.4 LUFS. Notice it's 6 decibels louder than it needs to be. It's not -14. Let's just go faster. Doja Cat, -7 LUFS. Billie Eilish, -9.4. Dua Lipa, -7.9 LUFS. Post Malone Circles, -5.6 LUFS. Megan Thee Stallion, featuring Beyonce, -8 LUFS. There was a time that most of the songs had a LUFS loudness of about -6 or -7, and it's definitely coming down. I'll give you that. The loudness war is coming backwards a little bit, and the songs are a little bit softer than they used to be, but nowhere near -14. So the takeaway is the average integrated loudness for the nominees is -8 LUFS. So guys, if you want to emulate the pros, if you want to copy the top mixing and mastering engineers in the world, then you should be aiming for around -8 integrated LUFS loudness. For me, that just seals the deal right there. I'm not interested in people's opinions. I'm only interested in facts. You don't just reinvent the wheel and go, you know, we should make a thing called a table, and then I want to invent this piece of wood that you could sit on. I'm going to call it a chair. No, you go to restaurants and you see, oh, they have a front of house person. They have decorations, they have tables, they have waiters. There's kitchens in the back. It's not in the front. You copy what the top guys are doing and then you do it a little bit better. And the top guys are averaging their LUFS loudness at about -8. So that would be my suggestion. This was from last year. So why don't we have a look at Apple Music? Let's go and see how loud are these songs. We're going to measure the LUFS loudness in
Dude, all you need to do is say, do it at -8, but he just went on a whole tirade of just roasting. He was just roasting. Roblox more important than TVs. That dude is annoying, no, literally. Might as well stream. Yo, Reptile House in the house. What y'all working on today? Yeah, you guys should do museum exhibit with all your art. Like big pieces and stuff like that. I love the hybrid paintings that you guys do with the felt and the acrylic. Super cool. Dude, y'all should stream. Yeah, this guy did hit 9 minutes of being really mean. And now he's finally getting into information.
We're getting a LUFS integrated of -10.5, but you must remember we have to subtract the peak off. So if you subtract -2.5 or 10.5, what is the LUFS loudness of the song? -8. Okay, so the number 1 song in the world is -8. Let's go to the next track.
What? I thought True Peak was different than LUFS loudness.
We're going to measure the LUFS loudness in Logic. So let's play the song first. We're getting a LUFS integrated of minus 10.5, but you must remember we have to subtract the peak off. So if you subtract minus 2.5 or 10.5, what is the LUFS loudness of the song? Minus 8. Okay, so the number...
Yeah, what the? This guy's just spreading misinformation. I gotta stop listening to this guy. Where's my tab at? Okay, let's listen to this guy.
Producers, want to make creative remixes that stand out and get you noticed?
No.
This is Wingman, a new plugin from the...
Everyone I speak to has the same problem. They bounce down the mix, they play it back next to something on Spotify, and it sounds thin, it sounds quiet. And frankly, it sounds a bit rubbish. And they do what we all do, they reach for the limiter and start pushing. Crank the input up, push it harder, and somehow, impossibly, it gets worse. Here's the thing, your mix isn't quiet. Your gain staging has been wrong since the moment you opened that session. I want to be honest with you about something, because this is a mistake I made myself for an embarrassingly long time. A few years back, I had a mix I could not get loud. Sounded great in the room, decent low end, nice top end, everything sitting where I wanted it. But every time I pushed the master limiter, it turned into mush. So I convinced myself I needed a better limiter. I spent 2 weeks reading forums, watched probably 15 tutorials, nearly bought a plugin I absolutely did not need. Then I pulled up my VU
You ever
on the tracks.
stream painting?
Every single track in that session was hitting somewhere between -2 and 0 dBFS before processing. I've been stacking gain on top of gain since track 1. By the time the signal got to the master bus, it was already a mess. The limiter wasn't the problem. It never was. Today, I'm going to give you 5 reasons your mix isn't loud enough, and none of them require you to buy a single thing. Right, let's get into it. Right, number 1, and this is the big one. Every track in your session should be averaging somewhere around -18 dBFS before you touch a single plugin. Not peaking at -18, averaging at -18. That gives your plugins headroom to work in, that gives your buses headroom, and that gives your master bus somewhere to go. Most of us open per session, record something, it comes in peaking at -6, and we just get on with it. Then we add an EQ. The EQ adds a bit of gain. Then a compressor adds a bit more. A saturation plugin, a bit more. Reverb send, a bit more. And by the time we finished the channel strip, we've added 4 or 5 dB of gain that we didn't mean to add. Do that across 24 tracks and you've got a master bus that's already clipping before you've even loaded a limiter. The fix is dead simple. Before you do anything else in a session, before plugins, before automation, before any of it, go through every single track and pull the fader down or trim the input until your meters are sitting around that -18 mark. It takes about 10 minutes and it will change your mixes immediately. Wish someone had...
So that's 6 dB of headroom from 12, -18. Okay, we know this. What are we doing at this island here? Hey. Okay. I'm chilling. I'm kind of just letting my teammates do everything. Well, that's the perfect combo, Stream Robert. But yeah, I definitely think you guys should. I forget what city you guys are based out of, but you guys should try to find some. Oh no, my team's leaving without me. There we go. You guys should hit up some museum curators and get yourself a fucking a space or an exhibit or something like that. It might be easier than you think. I know some of my friends have done it before in Cincinnati. But you guys have so much art, you could totally make an exhibit. Let them carry you now, literally. Literally. Oh no, okay, what the hell?
Okay, here we go.
Who told me this in 1987? I'm telling you now. Quick one. Before we get to number 2, if this is landing, hit subscribe. I put these out every week specifically for people like us. Over 40, home studio, try to get a pro sound without losing our minds or our savings. Right, back to it.
Yeah,
Number 2,
are you
and this
for
is where we're going
real?
to spend a bit of time because there's
You'd be surprised how far you can get with calling an email. And most of those people's emails are out there publicly. You just look at who was in charge of the past exhibits there. Or who's like the museum director or curator or whatever. You could even probably just go in person and ask, and they might give you an email. But they might say no at first, but you know, you gotta be persistent. You guys though, I feel like they'd be interested though, because especially if you guys have a little bit of a following in whatever city you're in. It'd be in there, and honestly in the museum's best interest to put you in there. They're leaving me. I want to drive the boat. Oh, the fire's running low. Holy shit. No. Not the fire. Computer. Yeah, definitely. I'd love to see you guys in a museum space. I'd come visit. You guys had an exhibit. I'd come visit wherever it was. I'd drive there. Me and my homie, we'd go drive there. And honestly, you can make this super immersive too. Like have like a whole trippy room or something. I'm hungry. Guys, what do we eat? Oh, I feel bad. I'm dead. Oh god. Oh fuck. That was such a bad idea. Oh god. Damn, they ate it? What the fuck? Okay. Get the fuck out of here. Is there already a cooking pot? What? What's going on here? What is happening? What's happening? Dude, what is happening? Am I winning? Am I gonna die? Yeah, do you know what you gotta do? I think I'm in the back rooms. Oh, that's my health bar. Why are you killing me? Ah! No! You're going inside. Oh, dang, I died. Oh. Dang, they're not gonna revive me? What is this guy? Is this some kind of droid? Whatever.
More confusion about limiters than almost anything else in home studio mixing, and most of it is completely unnecessary. First, a quick word on what a limiter actually does. It's just a compressor with an infinite ratio, and what that means in plain English is this. You set a ceiling and nothing gets above that ceiling. Full stop. It's a brick wall. The ceiling, sometimes called the output ceiling or true peak ceiling, should be set at -1 dBFS, not 0, -1. And here's why. When audio gets converted for streaming, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, there's a process called inter-sample peak clipping that can push your audio above 0, even if your limiter says it's topped out at 0. -1 gives you a safety margin. Set it and leave it there. Quick word on LUFS or LUFS before we go any further, because it comes up a lot and it throws people completely. LUFS stands for loudness units relative to full scale, which tells you absolutely nothing, I know. Here's the thing, it's just a measurement of how loud your track sounds on average to the human ear. Not the peak, not the single loudest moment, the average perceived loudness across the whole track. Think of it like the average temperature of a room, not the hottest spot next to the radiator. Streaming platforms use LUFS to make sure everything plays back at a similar volume, so nobody's track blasts you out of your seat and the next one whispers at you. -14 LUFS is roughly where they set the dial, and that's all it is. Right, so that's what LUFS is and why streaming cares about it. Now, here's how you actually set the limiter correctly. Streaming platforms, Spotify, YouTube, all of them, normalize loudness to around -14 LUFS, which means if you smash your mix to -7 LUFS, trying to make it loud, Spotify is going to turn it down, and a heavily limited mix that's been turned down sounds worse than a mix that was mastered sensibly in the first place. So you've done all the work for nothing. You're not making it louder for the listener, you're making it worse. So open up your limiter on the master bus, set your output ceiling to -1. Now, watch the gain reduction meter. That's the meter that shows you how hard the limiter is working. You want to see about 1 to 3 dB of gain reduction on the loudest parts of your mix, maybe 4 on the absolute peaks, and that's it. If you're seeing 6, 8, 10 dB of gain reduction, the limiter is telling you something. It's telling you your mix is too hot going into it. So go back, Fix the gain staging on your tracks. Fix the levels on your buses. The limiter should be the last tiny polish, not the thing holding everything together. Okay, think of it like this. A limiter is the last coat of varnish on a piece of furniture. It's not there to hide the scratches. If you've got scratches, you've got to sand them out first. Then you varnish. And one more thing on limiters. One limiter on the master bus. That's the only place it belongs. If you've got limiters on your drum bus, your vocal bus, your guitar bus, and your master bus, take them all off except the master. Every one of those limiters is eating into your dynamics before your signal even gets there. By the time it reaches the master bus, there's nothing left. There's no punch, no transients, no life. Just a wall of sound that sits there.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Number 3, and this one is the invisible thief. Your sub bass, everything below about 30 hertz, is almost completely inaudible on most speakers and headphones, but it's using up headroom. It's there on the meter, it's there on the waveform, and it's pushing the limiter without adding anything anyone can actually hear. Same goes for low mid buildup on guitars, keys, synths, room mics. All of that sits between 80 and 200 hertz, and it stacks up into a wall of mud that your limiter then has to deal with. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. High pass filter on everything that isn't carrying low end. Everything except your kick drum and your bass. Guitars, high pass at 100 hertz. Keys, 80 to 100. Acoustic guitars, sometimes as high as 150. Room mics, even higher. Cut the stuff nobody can hear, and your mix will suddenly have room to breathe and room to get loud. Number 4, I've said this before and I'll keep saying it until people actually do it. Turn it down. When you mix loud, your ears lie to you. Everything sounds fuller, punchier, more aggressive than it actually is, so you think it's sorted. You bounce it down, stick it on your phone, and it's got no weight at all. The fix is simple. Mix at conversation volume. If you can talk comfortably over it, you're in the right ballpark. And before you bounce, do one final check, even quieter than that. If it still sounds punchy and full at low volume, it'll translate on anything. If it falls apart when you turn it down, that's the mix telling you there's something wrong. Listen to it. I know, you're thinking, that's it? Turn it down a bit? I've been making music for 30 years. I think I know how loud to mix. So did I, mate. So did I. And number 5, this one takes 30 seconds and most people never do it, which is a shame because it's the one that changes everything immediately. Find a commercial track in the same genre as the one you're mixing, something you know well, something that sounds the way you want yours to sound, and import it into your DAW on a new track. Match the loudness, use a loudness meter, not your ears, then A/B between your mix and the reference. Just press play on one and then the other. You've been mixing in isolation, your ears have adapted to your session, they've forgotten what loud and clear actually sounds like. The reference track reminds them. And here's what you're listening for. Don't compare the top end, don't compare the low end, just ask yourself one question. Does my mix feel like it's sitting in the same room as the reference, or does it feel like it's in a different building? That's the ear training right there. Do it every mix, every time. The difference will be obvious, possibly uncomfortable, but that's the point. I know you're thinking, that's it? That's the big finish? Import a song and press play? Try it, then tell me. Right, 5 reasons your mix isn't loud enough. Gain staging too hot from the start, limiting everything instead of just the master, low end eating your headroom, mixing too loud and not referencing against anything. None of it costs money, and all of it makes an immediate difference. Tell me in the comments which one of these you've been guilty of. I've got a strong feeling it's number 1 for most of you. And I promise, no judgment, I was doing it for an embarrassingly long time. I'll see you in the next one.
So check this out, I'm mastering a song and let's say I want to aim for a loudness level of -14 LUFS recommended by most streaming services. So while mastering the song, I look at the integrated LUFS meter and I aim for -14 LUFS. So I guess I'm good to go now. Not so fast. Check this out. After I bounce the master, look at the statistics of that master. When I look at the integrated loudness level, it's now down to -16.8 LUFS. So that means that if you master your music at -14 LUFS, chances are that your master is going to sound quieter. So why is that? Let's find out. Before we jump in, just a quick announcement to let you know that I'm actually working on something new in relation to mastering that will be launched very soon. If you don't want to miss this, make sure you jump on the waiting list by clicking the link below, and at the same time, you'll have access to my free ultimate mixing guides. Let's jump in Cubase. I'm going to use Supervision as my metering system, and that is a stock plugin out of Cubase, but if you don't have access to Supervision, you can go and download the free U-Lean loudness meter. Okay, this one is entirely free. I'm going to leave the link down below. So now the first thing to understand here is that we have 3 different levels of LUFS. We have the momentary max LUFS, which will give you the average perceived loudness level within a period of time of, I think it's 400 milliseconds or so. Very close to RMS, however, it doesn't measure the average level quite the same way as RMS. I'm not going to jump into the differences in this video. But what you need to understand, it does give you an average perceived loudness level within a very short period of time of approximately 400 milliseconds. Now, the short-term LUFS will go a step further. It's going to give you the average loudness level within a period of 3 seconds. And the integrated LUFS level is the average loudness level within a period of time of an actual piece of audio. So that could be the length of a full audio out of a movie or just a piece of music. So the average loudness level of a master will be the integrated LUFS, and that is the metering used by most streaming services. Some like Spotify will set that up to -14 LUFS, and the reason streaming services do so is to give the listener a better experience while listening to music on their platform. So this way you don't have like a super loud master and the next song that follows is very quiet, so you're not going to go back and forth with a different loudness while listening to music, which is quite annoying, to be honest, you know. So by normalizing everything down to -14 LUFS, all songs will approximately be played at the same loudness level, which is way better for the listener. Now, you can of course deactivate that option and listen to the songs at their original loudness level, but honestly, that is quite annoying. If you have a master that goes above -14 LUFS, Spotify and other services will bring it down and normalize it to -14. And same thing will happen if your master is too quiet and is below -14 LUFS. Some services will normalize the audio to peak level to bring the audio louder. However, it's not all services that will do so, and we'll look at that later. But for now, this is what happens. When I focus on an integrated LUFS value of -14, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot because, like I said, the integrated loudness measurement will measure loudness from the minute you click on start, if you're working within your DAW, to the time you click on stop. The loudness level during that time will be the integrated LUFS in this case. So what I do in mastering, I pick the loudest part of the song, and this is where I'm going to base myself on to look at my loudness levels, okay? So in this case, if I look at the integrated LUFS, I'm at -14.3, but like we saw earlier, my final master is going to be even quieter. And the reason is simple, it's because, like I said, the integrated LUFS value is going to be the perceived loudness on the full piece of audio that I'm going to bounce after I'm done mastering, which is the full song in this case, okay? And that will put into account all the different sections of the song, not only the loudest part of the song. And since I have like quieter parts that are significantly quieter than the choruses, it's automatically by nature going to bring the loudness level.
Oh, you want Suno? Yeah, I'm on Suno too. It's like a battle. And it's an unwarranted battle because I know I'm going to win, but I'm not trying to battle you. That's why I don't want to battle you, because I'm going to win. I just want us to win together, right?
Ah, that was brave.
That's crazy.
My name is my guy Mars. I'm a co-founder of the greatest band in production.
Lower. So using integrated LUFS while I'm mastering is not going to work unless I listen to the song from the beginning to the end and I look at my LUFS integrated meter. Now in that case, it will give me the correct loudness level of that song. So now to show you in practice how that looks like, I'm going to use the Loudness Penalty Studio by Meter Plugs, which is an amazing tool if you want to know what streaming services are going to do with your masters once you upload them, okay, on their service. So I have a list of a bunch of different streaming services like Amazon Music, Apple, Deezer, Spotify, Tidal, and YouTube Music. And I imported 3 different versions of the same master at 3 different loudness levels. The loud one at -9.4 LUFS, the other one a bit quieter at -12.5 LUFS, and the quieter one, which was the one I was aiming to master at -14, but that came out at -16.9 LUFS, okay? So the pink line on each song is going to give me the LUFS level. If I click on loudness match, this is going to apply exactly what streaming services are going to do by default on their platform. They're going to loudness match all songs at the same level, which is -14 LUFS for Spotify. You know, that can vary from one platform to another. But in the case of Spotify, -14 LUFS is the level they're going to bring everything down to, or everything up to, if your master was quieter, like it was in the case of my -14 master version that I bounced earlier. So the quieter master has been bumped up by 2.9 dBs, and the 2 other versions were brought down by a bit. You know, the louder one by 4.6 dBs and the one in between by 1.5 dBs. Okay, so now they're supposed to sound all the same as far as the loudness goes. So let's have a listen. As far as the loudness level goes, they do sound pretty much the same. Now, the differences we hear are mainly due to the amount of processing made in the mastering stage to make one master louder than the other, okay? But this is going to be a topic for another video. But now you're saying, fine, okay, so no big deal if I master at -14 LUFS. You know, Spotify will bring that up. However, Spotify will bring it up, and that process of bringing the music louder is called the positive gain. And when they bring your song louder, they do normalize to true peak level. In my case, it was able to bring it up to -14 LUFS, which is fine, but that might not be the case for all masters that are mastered at a -14 LUFS level, and that will depend on the way the song was mastered, which will influence the amount of true peak level when bouncing your master. And I actually did the experiment using the same song where I have a different true peak level and even a quieter LUFS level. And I actually mastered this one aiming at minus 13 LUFS. And it came out quieter. And Spotify weren't able to increase the level of that quieter version more than 0.8 dB. And on top of that, even if the master was done in a way that Spotify is able to increase the volume to minus 14 LUFS, that is not the case for all streaming services. So if we look at Amazon Music, for example, they are not going to increase the level of any productions. If your master goes in at a lower level than minus 14 LUFS, it's going to play at that level, and that's it, okay? Everything louder will be brought down, but quieter masters will stay quiet. And same for YouTube. YouTube Music will not apply positive gain on a quiet master, okay? So that's why I'm saying it's important, as far as I'm concerned, not to aim minus 14 LUFS when mastering music. What I do on my side, I always focus on the loudest part of a song, and I look at my short-term LUFS value. And now, there's not a specific number to reach for, and that's the beauty of it. It's all about personal choice and what is good for the production you're mastering. Know that the louder you go, you will get less dynamic range, and at some point, that can affect the audio quality of your master. Because of the lack of dynamic range, it can introduce some side effects like lack of punch, some distortion, and so on. As a starting point, I'm going to go at around minus 10 to minus 9 LUFS short term. That will give me a better LUFS integrated level when bouncing the full master. It's going to be louder than minus 14 LUFS, and that's okay. You know, the master will be brought down by a few dBs, but I'm fine with that. Because for me, it's way better to have a master that goes above minus 14 LUFS, even if they bring it down by a few dBs, than have a master that is too quiet and that is under minus 14 LUFS. On my side, I kind of like to have a good balance between a dynamic master and a loud master, and I go with what sounds best, and that's it. I don't overthink it. If you want to watch more mastering related videos, click on this playlist. Until next time, take care and see you.
The new Auto-Tune 2026.
Everyone I speak to has the same problem.
So check this out. I'm mastering a song, and let's say I want to aim for a loudness level of minus 14 LUFS, recommended by most streaming services. So while mastering the song, I look at the integrated LUFS meter, and I aim for minus 4. LUFS. So I guess I'm good to go now. Not so fast. Check this out. After I bounce the master, look at the statistics of that. Master. When I look at the integrated loudness level, it's now down to minus 16.8 LUFS. So that means that if you master your music at minus 14 LUFS, chances are that your master is going to sound quieter. So why is that? Let's find out. Before we jump in, just a quick announcement to let you know that I'm actually working on something new in relation to mastering. that will be launched very soon. If you don't want to miss this, make sure you jump on the waiting list by clicking the link below, and at the same time you'll have access to my free ultimate mixing guides. Let's jump in Cubase. I'm going to use Supervision as my metering system, and that is a stock plugin out of Cubase. But if you don't have access to Supervision, you can go and download the free U-Lean loudness meter. Okay, this one is entirely free. I'm going to leave the link down below. So now the first thing to understand here is that we have 3 different levels of LUFS. We have the momentary max LUFS, which will give you the average perceived loudness level within a period of time of, I think it's 400 milliseconds or so. Very close to RMS, however, it doesn't measure the average level quite the same way as RMS. I'm not going to jump into the differences in this video. But what you need to understand, it does give you an average perceived loudness level within a very short period of time of approximately 400 milliseconds. Now, the short-term LUFS will go a step further. It's going to give you the average loudness level within a period of 3 seconds. And the integrated LUFS level is the average loudness level within a period of time of an actual piece of audio. So that could be the length of a full audio out of a movie or just a piece of music. So the average loudness level of a master will be the integrated LUFS, and that is the metering used by most streaming services. Some like Spotify will set that up to -14 LUFS, and the reason streaming services do so is to give the listener a better experience while listening to music on their platform. So this way you don't have like a super loud master and the next song that follows is very quiet, so you're not going to go back and forth with a different loudness while listening to music, which is quite annoying to be honest, you know. So by normalizing everything down to -14 LUFS, all songs will approximately be played at the same loudness level, which is way better for the listener. Now, you can of course deactivate that option and listen to the songs at their original loudness level, but honestly, that is quite annoying. If you have a master that goes above -14 LUFS, Spotify and other services will bring it down and normalize it to -14. And same thing will happen if your master is too quiet and is below -14 LUFS. Some services will normalize the audio to peak level to bring the audio louder. However, it's not all services that will do so, and we'll look at that later. But for now, this is what happens. When I focus on an integrated LUFS value of -14, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot because, like I said, the integrated loudness measurement will measure loudness from the minute you click on start, if you're working within your DAW, to the time you click on stop. The loudness level during that time will be the integrated LUFS in this case. So what I do in mastering, I pick the loudest part of the song, and this is what I'm going to base myself on to look at my loudness levels. Okay. So in this case, if I look at the integrated LUFS, I'm at -14.3, but like we saw earlier, my final master is going to be even quieter. And the reason is simple. It's because, like I said, the integrated LUFS value is going to be the perceived loudness on the full piece of audio that I'm going to bounce after I'm done mastering, which is the full song in this case. Okay. And that will put into account all the different sections of the song, not only the loudest part of the song. And since I have like quieter parts that are significantly quieter than choruses, it's automatically by nature going to bring the loudness level lower. So using integrated LUFS while I'm mastering is not going to work unless I listen to the song from the beginning to the end and I look at my LUFS integrated meter. Now in that case, it will give me the correct loudness level of that song. So now to show you in practice how that looks like, I'm going to use the Loudness Penalty Studio by Meterplugs, which is an amazing tool if you want to know what streaming services are going to do with your masters once you upload them, okay, on their service. So I have a list of a bunch of different streaming services like Amazon Music, Apple, Deezer, Spotify, Tidal, and YouTube Music. And I imported 3 different versions of the same master at 3 different loudness levels. The loud one at -9.4 LUFS, the other one a bit quieter at -12.5 LUFS, and the quieter one, which was the one I was aiming to master at -14, but that came out at -16.9 LUFS. Okay, so the pink line on each song is going to give me the LUFS level. If I click on loudness match, this is going to apply exactly what streaming services are going to do by default on their platform. They're going to loudness match all songs at the same level, which is -14 LUFS for Spotify. You know, that can vary from one platform to another. But in the case of Spotify, -14 LUFS is the level they're going to bring everything down to or everything up to. If your master was quieter, like it was in the case of my -14 master version that I bounced earlier. So the quieter master has been bumped up by 2.9 dBs, and the 2 other versions were brought down by a bit. You know, the louder one by 4.6 dBs and the one in between by 1.5 dBs. Okay, so now they're supposed to sound all the same as far as the loudness goes. So let's have a listen. As far as the loudness level goes, they do sound pretty much the same. Now, the differences we hear are mainly due to the amount of processing made in the mastering stage to make one master louder than the other, okay? But this is going to be a topic for another video. But now you're saying, fine, okay, so no big deal if I master at -14 LUFS. You know, Spotify will bring that up. However, Spotify will bring it up, and that process of bringing the music louder is called the positive gain. And when they bring your song louder, they do normalize to true peak level. In my case, it was able to bring it up to -14 LUFS, which is fine, but that might not be the case for all masters that are mastered at a -14 LUFS level. And that will depend on the way the song was mastered, which will influence the amount of true peak level when bouncing your master. And I actually did the experiment using the same song where I have a different true peak level and even a quieter LUFS level. And I actually mastered this one aiming at -13 LUFS, and it came out quieter. And Spotify weren't able to increase the level of that quieter version more than 0.8 dB. And on top of that, even if the master was done in a way that Spotify is able to increase the volume to -14 LUFS, that is not the case for all streaming services. So if we look at Amazon Music, for example, they are not going to increase the level of any productions. If your master goes in at a lower level than -14 LUFS, it's going to play at that level, and that's it, okay? Everything louder will be brought down, but quieter masters will stay quiet. And same for YouTube. YouTube Music will not apply positive gain on a quiet master, okay? So that's why I'm saying it's important, as far as I'm concerned, not to aim -14 LUFS when mastering music. What I do on my side. I always focus on the loudest part of a song, and I look at my short-term LUFS value. And now, there's not a specific number to reach for, and that's the beauty of it. It's all about personal choice and what is good for the production you're mastering. Note that the louder you go, you will get less dynamic range, and at some point, that can affect the audio quality of your master. Because of the lack of dynamic range, it can introduce some side effects like lack of punch, some distortion, and so on. As a starting point, I'm going to go at around -10 to -9 LUFS short term. That will give me a better LUFS integrated level when bouncing the full master. It's going to be louder than -14 LUFS, and that's okay. You know, the master will be brought down by a few dBs, but I'm fine with that. Because for me, it's way better to have a master that goes above -14 LUFS, even.
I'm going to break down the 5 mastering mistakes that every beginner makes, using my experience from 30 years of mastering for some of the world's leading artists. You're about to know what's keeping you sounding amateur and what will put you ahead of others mastering their own music. Let me show you how. So number 1 is too much sub bass on your track, which means you're not going to be able to get it loud enough. It also means it's not going to be able to translate to other speakers. Because when you have loads of low sub going on that you can't necessarily hear if you're on small speakers or headphones, it's going to be booming everywhere else and the speaker cones aren't going to be able to play it back. So let me show you how you can know you've got that sub bass if you haven't got a chance to hear it in your own studio. So I've got a track here that's got a very low sub on it. Let me just play you that. You can see I've got this plugin called Span. It's a free plugin, but what this does, it shows you what frequencies are playing back, so you can see the balance between the top and the bottom. And if I play that again, and you can see that around the 30 to 50 zone, it's really heavy on those lower sub notes. Let me show you. So as I say, if you've got that low 40 hertz going on, you don't want to lose it completely, but you need to control it, because otherwise it's going to take over the sound. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, I would get we're in mastering, so we don't have the stems, so we are going to just have to deal with it as we've got it. So on a Pro Q4, I'm going to put a low shelf on at 14 hertz. Sounds like it's low down, but it is starting around 20 hertz. And what that's doing is just sculpting the low end. It's not cutting it completely, it's just sculpting it to just keep it tight and under control in the very, very low stuff. And then next up, I'm going to put a little dynamic EQ on just to bring it down as those low notes hit. I don't want it there apart from when those low notes go to control them a little bit. So if you can't find them, because you can usually see them on the Span, but what you can do as well is play it. So if I just play this and then put it into a boost mode so that you're pulling those notes out so that you can hear them first of all, if you've got speakers that will play that low. So just check this out. So that kind of really shows you where it is. So then bring that down and then bring the dynamic down to about -3 dB. That should be enough because it's not going to put it all the way to 3 dB, but it will just tap it down a dB, which very small increments when you're mastering. Let's now have a listen to how this plays back once we've got those two things in place. So after the EQ, what I want to do, I just want to get all the low end working together a bit more and more under control. So what I'm going to do is then add a plugin called Titas on. And what this does, it just works on the low end, grabs it and keeps it under control. So I'm going to set this crossover here to about 80 around here somewhere. And then I'm just going to bring this down so that it's coming to around -2, 3 dB, just so that when it's hitting those subs, it's just going to grab the subs and just hold them nicely. We don't want to lose them completely, but we just want the feel of them there, but under control. So let's have a listen to what this does. So you can hear everything's now under control. Those notes are all playing at the same level. We haven't got that boomy low end anymore. And that will get you a louder master, and it will also get a more controlled master when it's playing on different speakers, wherever they happen to be played. The second thing is stop mastering like you're mixing. When you're mastering your own music, it's very easy to think of all of the instruments as separate parts and still have that mixing mentality where you're treating each part separately and then trying to get them to fit together in the mix. By the time you get to mastering stage, we already have the mix, we already have a 2-track that we need to work on. So we think in frequency bands rather than in individual instruments. So how I deal with this is I think of the low end, the low mids, the high mids, and then the tops. So I'm always working from the bottom to the top. When I'm listening, I'll think what's going on with the bass, what's happening to the low end. Is it warmer in the mids or is it muddy? Is it need a bit more openness in the middle, or the tops, is it too bright or is it too dull? That's all I'm thinking. It's more kind of overall sheen rather than the individual instruments. So for example, when I've got an EQ, if I'm listening to the bass, if I'm going to boost, then I'm always boosting wide, because there's a lot of frequencies and a lot of instruments going on in that area. So if you go narrow, you're just going to poke things out. It doesn't feel very natural. So when you're boosting, you go wider. And when you're cutting, for example, if you're cutting out a little bit of muddiness in the low mids, because you're thinking, is it muddy or does it need warmth? If it was muddy, I might do a cut, say around 180, 160, depending on the track, but it would be a narrow cut because I'm really just wanting to cut out certain areas that actually are making it sound muddy. If I did a massive one, it would take out loads of stuff and it sounds scooped and it would sound thin and you just lose too much of the sound. By using these wide boosts, you're actually adding level to the track. So when you get to the limiter at the end, you're not actually going to need as much limiting because you've added these nice curves and you create the sound rather than doing loads of cuts and it sounds really jagged and not put together very well. Number 3, I see loads of people just smashing the limiter to get the track really loud. The problem you have with that is it starts sounding distorted, flat, lifeless, and it just loses all the character of the sound that you've been working on for ages. Let me show you how you get it sounding as loud, but keep it nice and clean and dynamic. So I've got this track, I want to get it to around -8 LUFS on this meter here. You look at the integrated here. And so I've got to put 7 dB of gain on the limiter, which is the fab filter, to get it to that level. Let's have a listen to it. To me, it sounds pretty distorted. So we're getting about -6.8 on the amount of gain reduction. So that's really crushing the track down. So the way to get rid of that so that we can have less gain reduction, so we're not giving it as much crush, is we get a clipper beforehand, but we only shave about 2 dBs of the peaks off. So what the clipper's doing, it's going to just cut the peaks off, so then the limiter isn't working on those peaks.
So all these mastering engineers are actually mastering at like -8 LUFS. -1 dB true peak.
It's working on the bit underneath. That means it won't have to work as hard because it's not working on this 2 dB of peak at the top, and that will give it a more open sound. So let's just set this up, and you'll see that we won't have as much gain reduction. So you can see by clipping only around 2 dB off, we're now only doing 3.8 of gain reduction. So we're going to have a more open sound because the limiter isn't working as hard. So let's have a listen to it before and after having the clipper, and then you'll see what I mean. We're still getting exactly the same LUFS, but it should sound more open, more controlled, and more dynamic. Number 4 is don't listen blind. You need to be listening to reference tracks of the music that yours is going to go up against. A lot of people don't do this, and then they just go around in circles, and when they play their track out, it just falls apart. They're not going to sound as good as everyone out there. The things you're listening for are, you want to know the level's going to be the same, the output level, you want to know if the bass is right, whether it's got too much top or whether it needs more, is it open, how's the stereo width, all of these things. What's happening in your genre? Have a reference. You can use a bit of software called Reference by Mastering the Mix. It's what I use. So you can play your original, you can load up any references you've got in the top, and then flick between them. So you can think, oh, okay, now mine doesn't sound as bright, or it has got too much bass on it compared to this reference track that I want it to sound like. Super important, especially if you're working in an untreated environment, small speakers, or you're on headphones. Don't trust your ears, trust listening to other stuff and getting your head around how things should sound rather than thinking in your head how they should sound. If you don't have your own references, or you want to see the references that I use when I'm mastering for outside clients, then there's a link in the description where if you click on that, I'll send you my Spotify playlist. Number 5 is adding 50 plugins to your mastering chain is not going to get you a good sound. I see loads of beginner mastering engineers with like 10 plugins like this, all one after another, doing little bits here, little bits there, and they just keep adding and adding and adding. But what you need to do is have the mindset when you're mastering of how we used to do it back in the day where you only had a few bits of kit, so you've got like 5 pieces of equipment, you know them inside out, and they're going to do a really good job for what they need to do. If you find yourself adding more plugins, you're normally contradicting something you've done before, so you're better off taking that off what you did before and making a different adjustment. And also if you find yourself having loads of plugins on there, just start deleting them and listen to what the effect does, because with mastering a lot of the time, a few little things in the right places gets you a much bigger result than loads and loads of small tweaks in a lot of places. So let me give you an example of what your chain could look like. This would be all the things that I would use, and I'd be able to master nearly every track with these, in the same way that if I was working on hardware, this would be my software equivalent. So first off, in my chain, I've got a Ampex tape machine. I might not be using it for compression, tape compression, but it's got a nice EQ in there, warms things up, it's got a bit of a vibe. So it's just a nice way of getting a bit of colour in the track before you start doing anything else. Not always on, turn it on and off, what works, what doesn't. Next thing, I'm going to start crafting the sound of it. So I'd have an EQ like the Pro Q4. It does loads of different things. It's dynamic, it's spectral, it does, you know, I'm basically at this point getting the balance right, getting the low end right, and the tops and all that I explained earlier on. Next in my chain would be tight ass. That's to control the low end, get it nice and punchy, so it's coming through the speakers and it's not just a big farty low end. Tight ass does that really well, keeps it well under control, and then you can get the track louder at the end because you haven't got as much boomy bass going on. Then next up, I want to kind of get a little bit of gel, a little bit of glue together of the track, so it's all just working as one solid sound. And so that way, after I've done the EQ and the low end, I've then now doing the whole sound, and I would use something like this Capital Mastering compressor. It's really vibey, but it does a really nice gluey sound. I wouldn't ever do any more gain reduction at this point than say half a dB, 1 dB maximum. Sometimes the needles don't even move because I just want that sound of it, just locking it in together. So then I'm kind of getting to the end where I crafted the low end, I've done a bit of EQ, I've got it going, so now I might just need a bit more tops, or this is where I'm just doing a really nice smooth EQ, and for that I would use the Masalek EQ, because I love Masalek hardware and software sounds really close. So putting things on nice EQ here is 27K, 1 dB on a shelf. It just really opens the top end up and it sounds really nice on the Masalek. So this is the point where I'm just finishing off before we get into the limiter, which would be my last plugin. You've always got to have a limiter at the end. Standard limiter is the Pro L2, maximizer as well on Ozone's brilliant. There's loads out there, these are my kind of go-to, have been for ages, still love them. You can get things pretty loud, as I showed you earlier, and also maybe put that clipper before, just so that you're not pushing this as hard. So now I've shown you this software chain, you might be thinking, well, how do I actually master with this? Well, I've got a course that you can take. It's called the Complete Mastering System. This is my full mastering course. You get to watch me master tracks from loads of different genres from start to finish. It's got loads of little tips and tricks in there that you won't see on YouTube because it's just things as I'm mastering. I'm telling you how I'm thinking, what my mindset is, and how you can apply this at home. I literally give away everything inside this, so follow the link in the description and you can get more information on it there. I briefly touched on how to glue with a compressor, but if you want to see more on how to glue your tracks together properly, have you ever heard someone say you just need a little bit more glue in the mix? And you've thought to yourself, what the hell are they talking about? Well, it's one of those buzzwords that you'll hear producers throw around all over the place. So today I'm going to break it down for you properly and show you how to glue your tracks so they do sound like a record and not just a bunch of sounds thrown together. If you don't know who I am, I'm Streaky. I've been a sound engineer for over 30 years, working with some of the biggest artists in the world. And I'm here on YouTube to help you get your music sounding better. So if you like that kind of thing, make sure you like the video and subscribe. So here's the problem. When you're producing, you're pulling sounds from everywhere. You're pulling samples, VSTs, and recordings from all over the place. And each one is in its own little world. When you put them together, it often sounds flat and disconnected. They're all competing with each other rather than working as one sound. And that's what people mean when they say your mix needs gluing. I'm going to show you 3 of the top ways of how to glue your sounds together. First one I'm going to show you is a classic drum bus compression. And we're going to use the SSL G bus compressor because this is the ultimate gluer, very well known. So I'm using UAD's version. These are the standard settings I'll show you. You can use these every single time. We have a ratio of 4:1. Where attack time is 10, can be 30, and release can be 0.1 or auto, a kind of favourites of everybody's. And then what we do, we just pull the threshold up whilst it's playing, and we get sort of around -2 to -4 dB of gain reduction, depending on how much you want to grab it and pull it together, and you'll hear it gets tighter. Obviously, with compression, we're bringing down the level as we're compressing it together. We're losing dBs. So with the gain makeup, I'll just add anything that I'm losing. So say, for example, here it says -4, then I'll add 4 dB of makeup gain here. So let's have a listen. I'll bring the threshold up, and you can hear it happening on the drums.
sounds
So number
nice.
2 is parallel compression for glue. Now you hear this a lot happening on drum buses, but we're going to do it on the vocal bus. So what this parallel does when it's on vocals, it brings up all the ambience and the sustain, and that gives it a nice thicker sound and makes it all kind of work together. You'll hear it as I put it in. So we're going to use the same G-bus compressor again. This time the settings are going to be really strong settings, because what we want to do with parallel compression is do really heavy compression and then just blend that in the background. So we're going to put it on a bus, which I've done here, so that we can keep this and we can blend it in here. So we've let's just turn that on. We're going to put the threshold completely down, because we want to really grab it, and we're going to do 1 on attack, 3 on the release, 4:1 ratio again. So we're doing quite heavy compression here. You'll see that happening. And what we do, we'll just take the fader to 0, and then we just blend it in until we get the thickness and the kind of glue sound that we want together. Check this out.
You didn't stand by me, oh you didn't stand by me, and now it matters not to me. You didn't stand by me, oh you didn't stand by me, and now it matters not to me. You didn't stand by me, oh you didn't stand by me, and now it matters not to me. You didn't stand by me.
So you can hear it's super subtle. It keeps the dynamic of the vocal, but just blends in a nice thickness and make it sound stronger. So before the third tip, if you're liking this video, please make sure you like the video and subscribe. It'll encourage me to give you all the good golden stuff right here on the channel. Okay, what's number 3? So the third tip is gluing stuff in a shared space. Basically what you want to do is have everything so that it sounds like it was all recorded in the same area. So what you can do with this is send them to a bus, add a little sprinkle of reverb on there, and then it joins them all together in a kind of gluey nice way, so they don't sound like they're recorded in different places. Let me show you, it's really subtle, but it works so well. So I've sent everything that I want in this space to a bus. On that bus, I've put the Valhalla vintage verb, set it up so it's like a really subtle room sound, so that when I blend it in, it's not washed in reverb, but it's still got a bit of a vibe. Okay, let me play you it and you'll hear how it sounds.
And as we get up to leave, you pull out a lead on my seat. You say you cannot believe my changes. I can't wait to get out, jump on the rooftops and shout. My God, how lucky was I?
So that's what glue really is. It's about cohesion. It's not one trick, it's a handful of subtle sounds to make your track sound like everything belongs together. So it's great showing you all these tricks, and I hope you get loads out of them. But if you don't work in the same way that all the pros work when they're mixing, you will never get that finished polished sound. So if you want to check out my free training that I have on streaky.com, or you can go to the link that's in the description, I'll show.
Still don't truly understand what glue is.
There's a reason pro mixers never seem to fight their faders or struggle with blown out levels. And it's not because they're gain staging every individual track. So I'm going to show you the exact VU meter method I use at the start of every mix, using just 2 tracks to get a balanced, frustration-free mix every time. When I work with my coaching clients, a big red flag for me is when I see faders nestle down right at the bottom of the fader throw. Some faders are high, some faders are low, sitting at like -30 or -25, somewhere down there. And this is always a sign to me that the gain staging of that mix is a little bit out of whack. So why gain stage? You often hear people say that because modern DAWs have such huge internal headroom, you can't really clip the mix engine anymore. And that's true for the internal mix engine inside the DAW, but it's not true for all plugins. Every plugin you insert has an input stage, and many of them are modelled on analog gear. And that input stage can be overdriven pretty easily, and you don't always see a red light telling you it's happening. You won't always hear blatant distortion either. What you might get instead is subtle distortion, softening of the transients, extra low mid build-up, and a mix that just feels a bit one-dimensional and lifeless. So this is all about controlling what you're feeding into dozens of input stages across your entire mix. Each one of those input stages is a gain stage, and that's why it really matters. Now this method I'm going to show you is more suited to acoustic and electric instruments and vocals, so the genres that use that instrumentation, rather than electronic styles or dance music styles. Now those styles of music, in my opinion, are very specialist, and if that's the sort of music you're working with, I suggest you go hunt out videos on gain staging on channels that specialise in EDM, dance music and hip-hop. So when I mix, I choose to use a VU meter here for a very deliberate reason. It stops me overthinking. A VU meter shows you the average level of sound, not necessarily the fast peaks. Some do, some don't. But that's not what I'm looking at here. The average level is much closer to how our ears react to sound. And we don't hear those tiny split-second peaks, we hear overall energy. So instead of chasing exact numbers and watching peak meters jumping around, I can glance at this VU meter and instantly know if I'm in the right ballpark. It's a bit like the difference between an analog watch and a digital watch. A digital watch tells you the time down to the exact second, and an analog watch tells you roughly where you are in the hour, which is usually all you really need to know. When I worked in BBC Radio, I needed to know exactly where we were in minutes and seconds to follow.
Hey everyone, Joe here. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I want to talk about something that is honestly the most number one question. The most number one. That's bad grammar, but nonetheless, that's what I said. It is the top question that I get on my Instagram channel, Facebook, and things. I invite followers to ask me questions. Number one, overwhelmingly, is about gain staging, and I think it's because I've mentioned it quite a number of times and about how important it is to me. So let's just talk about that for a second, and I want to kind of show you guys how I go about it on a daily basis. Number one, gain staging is still extremely relevant. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. That's just simply bad teaching. What they may tell you is the mathematics of 32-bit floating point architecture equals no clipping. And while that may be true, that doesn't mean that we can't clip buses and groups. That doesn't mean that we can't clip plugins, the input of plugins and the output of plugins. Or if we're lucky enough to have hardware or aspire to own hardware and use it in our mixing work at some point, it doesn't mean that you can't seriously overdrive a piece of gear or underdrive it to where the noise floor is much higher than it should be. But number two, and actually this is the most important reason to me, is because getting some kind of a baseline that is repeatable, right, is to me a big part of being a professional, effective, efficient, great mixer. Instead of just continuing to talk, let me just show you the screen here. What I have is a song
that's got, just a lot of really standard issue stuff. We have drum set, we have bass guitar, one passive electric, one passive acoustic, a steel guitar, B3, brass, which now that's a little out of the ordinary, but nonetheless, we will run into it throughout our careers, and some vocals, leads, and harmonies. This is recorded on analog equipment with an analog console, so everything's at Unity. That would be kind of the standard, but I have made everything hit the stereo bus. I'm going to turn it down because what you'll see is currently, I put a master fader on here. It's just going to be, look at that, it's just a distorted mess. So our gain staging is already all over the place. So let's just hit all and turn this down a little bit to give ourselves a little headroom to where we're not clipping our stereo bus. So when we turn this on, now it's not just crap, but it's going to be terrible nonetheless. That is horrible, right? All right, so that part of our mix process would be to better that, of course, through our static balances. But before I do anything, before I touch any faders whatsoever, me or one of my assistants is going to go in, we're going to look at these files, and we're going to push play, and we're going to see, in fact, let me just turn it down. We're going to look at these levels. See the metering here? All right, so it's all over the place, as you can see, and that's okay because we have things like drums, which are going to be very short burst transients, and we look down here at bass guitar, which is going to be, look at that, almost everything from beginning to end. I mean, there's a little transient information in there, of course, but it's pretty much just one level of energy all the way through. And acoustic guitar, you can see it gets louder in the choruses, quieter in the verses, blah blah blah. We can vocals, brass, you can see it's very punchy at times. So the first thing we need to do is put each one of these in a comfortable spot that's repeatable, so we can build on that from song to song to song. Now I'm looking at Pro Tools Classic metering at the moment, but you'll see that my peaks on the drums. Okay, so that one's a little over 6, this is a little under. What I like to do on short transient bursts, meaning the shells, the tom-toms, the snare drum, the kick drum, the overheads, I like to peak somewhere around -6. I don't want to be under that. I mean, unless it's some jazzy, brushy kind of things. But on most songs that they're using sticks and we have a solid backbeat, I want to be at -6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see this kick drum right here at the top is a little over -6. So I'm just going to trim it a little. That kick out is right at 6, pretty much. So yeah. The snare drum is a little over, snare bottom is a little under. So let's just turn that snare down a little bit. Let's turn the snare bottom up, and you'll see what I'm doing here is these. Your DAW could be different, but in Pro Tools, what we can do is there's this little fader in the corner where we can gain things up or down. I'm just using that real quickly, making these decisions just super fast. So we'll see that snare drum sample was printed hot. So let's turn that down a little bit. Yep, there it is, right around -6-ish, a little bit hotter. So I'll turn it down just a touch. Let's look at the hi-hat. The hi-hat, I usually want to peak somewhere around -10, and I'll tell you why these numbers exist in just a moment. But let's go ahead and take care of the drums. So that's better. The overheads look just about perfect. The room. I thought I saw some creeping way up here there a second ago. It's pretty, yeah. Okay, let's turn it down just a little bit. Let's turn it down just a little bit, and then let's look at this kit mic. Okay, that's, peaking up around -6. Okay, so why -6? Well, there's 2 reasons. If you look at -6 transients on a VU meter, for example, that's going to be close to analog 0, right about analog 0, actually, which is kind of where I want to be. So I'm choosing -18 digital dBFS as my standard. -18 dBFS, which is equals analog 0. So when I record, when I mix completely in the box with plugins, or whether I'm mixing and bringing in stuff like this into it, or even mixing on analog console, it's all the same standard. Analog 0, -18. If I use my DAW to -18, no matter what I'm doing, it's the exact same number. I never have to think about what am I working on today, and I don't have to change anything about my approach. It's always the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for -6 peaks. And the other element of that, other than the fact that that's analog 0, is the fact that when I put plugins on here, let's say I add a bunch of snap to a snare drum, add a bunch of body to a snare drum, add some low end to a kick drum, whatever I'm going to do, possibly I'm adding level to it. So I have plenty of headroom to go up before I start clipping plugins, channel inputs, outputs of various pieces of gear or anything. So I've got headroom. If I'm at -6, not only am I in an analog, beautiful sweet spot, but I have headroom for certain hits that jump up above there, adding bottom mid, adding compression, snap, all that good stuff. So that's why. So now let's start looking at our other numbers here, our other instruments. Let's look at the bass guitar. And what I'll switch to, I do this in Pro Tools Classic just because I've been using Pro Tools Classic forever. So even though it's showing peak, I can see where the averages are, right? Like my brain knows like where -18 is right here. But what I'll do for you guys is let's go to RMS, and you'll see that -18 is right here where my cursor is right there. Look at that. That bass guitar is just almost perfection. That electric guitar, perfection. Acoustic guitar, you know what? The acoustic guitar could come up a little bit. I did not record him, I had a little headroom I could have used. Okay, so on the choruses, let's take him up just a little bit. Let's take him up just a little bit to have more consistent average on these verses where he's quieter. Let's get that level up a little bit. Bass guitar, let's turn him up just a tiny bit. Steel guitar, let's see. Yep, see, so we can turn him up just a scotch. Let's check the B3. B3 is perfect, look at that. So here's -18. The B3 low, I'm not going to worry about it being ultra hot. I'm usually very happy for it to be, somewhere around the -20 to -25 range because it's really low end information. It eats up a lot of headroom. I'm not going to, work to boost that up. Let's check the brass here. Let's go to this section right here. You see where -18 is? Yeah. So I can turn that trombone up just a little bit. He's got a little room left for growth. Let's see. But then again, he's right there. He's hotter. You can see I'm peaking. But I'm still safe. I've got headroom. All right, let's check the vocals. -18, remember, is where my cursor is. Yeah. It's looking good. It's looking real good, actually. Perfect. Look at that. The thing about metering is get used to a metering scheme and then use that consistently in your work. So that way you know where you're at all the time. You just every time you get a session or you go to a different DAW, a different studio, whatever the case may be, you can open and make sure that you're in a familiar metering scheme. Like I said, I use Pro Tools Classic, but whether you want to use digital VU or RMS it's kind of up to you. Get used to something and stick with it. So right now I'm in a pretty much sweet spot on everything. So everything that I changed, is going to have a little number there that I can see that I changed it. So what I'm going to do is recommit to that math, right? So I'm going to keep that forever and always. So going forward. And I'm just reconsolidating is all I'm doing. So going forward, that gain staging is set in stone, right? I can't actually accidentally nudge that little fader or something like that. So as I progress through this, and even as I put this on a hard drive for storage purposes, to recall it possibly 3 years later when something has changed or they want to do a remix with some new singer or whatever the case may be, it's always perfect. And the thing is, I could pass this through an analog console and it's set up for perfection in the analog world too. So, it's just, remember, minus 18 dBFS equals analog 0, and that's the way we want to proceed. All right, now let's talk about bigger picture gain staging, because as we remember, this sounded like absolute garbage. So what we want to do is let's just put up a meter, like decibel by process audio, which is fantastic. And the reason I use this one is because I can see it on an iPad right here. One thing to know about when you set a VU meter on your stereo bus. Well, let's just do this. Let's type in the word meter. SSL meter, and you can see that the RMS is based on 500. Any metering that I use, I check that RMS, and I change it to the number of milliseconds that I'm used to, which is 400. So that's just a little side note, because if you use a different piece of software than me on your stereo bus, you're like, I'm seeing completely different metering than Joe had on his video. I don't understand why. It could be something that simple. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my kick drums here, and I can't hear them. There we go. And just because my eyes want to see Pro Tools Classic, because that's what I'm used to, I'm going to bring these up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys my stereo bus here. Okay, that's a little hot. So I'm going to turn, because there's two mics summing together. I want to see right around between 7 and 5, and you can see I'm getting up to around 6, so that's pretty good. I'm going to go just a little higher. Now I'm going to get up to, yeah, around -5 for my averages. Now, what I'll do, from this point, I can start mixing based around the decision that I made right there, and know that my stereo bus is going to be in a great spot. So let's check this out. Ready? So let's start adding some stuff in. It's a snare drum sample we had. Let's go to a place where the hi-hat is playing, right here. I don't even know if I want or need the room mic or the kick mic, so I'm gonna leave them on, but I'm gonna turn them down quite a bit. Let's go with the stereo elements first. We have a B3 and an acoustic guitar that are in stereo. There's a long-standing tradition in country music for the steel guitar to be leaning right. So what we'll do is we'll lean the steel guitar right, and we'll lean the electric guitar left. B3's a little hot. Let's turn the brass on. Let's go to this turnaround.
I had no idea there was a tradition of making the slide guitar or the steel guitar leaning right.
Let's follow some long-standing traditions right here, because we have a few mono elements and we have a few stereo elements. So I would probably put the trumpet on this side, the saxophone on this side, and leave the trombone somewhere in the middle, or slightly right, just because that's tradition. Okay, now let's turn the vocals on and get a little rough blend going in. Okay. So that, I'm having to turn the vocal up a little bit extra because there's no juice on.
It's like a song that would feel like it would be like it's the Bernstein Bears.
There's no business. By the time I get it compressed, the fader's probably going to be hovering right around 0, which is perfect. Let's take a peek at our stereo bus. So what that's allowed me to do, my stereo bus, what I like to do is hit it just above analog 0, meaning this right here. That's the way I like to mix, because if I'm going to take time to hit a tube or a transformer, whatever the case may be, I want a little extra saturation, a little extra color. So let's look here. All right, perfect. Look at that. I'm hovering around analog 0, but reaching levels just above there, and we'll switch here to RMS. And look, here's -18. We're just above there, which is absolute perfection. So if we turn in a mix to a mastering engineer that's going to take it to the next level of perfection and make it loud and all that, we're giving him a perfect level. And did you see we have a little headroom right here? We're not clipping either. Let's go back to Pro Tools Classic, which is a peak. So I'm peaking around -2, -3. So I have headroom. I have a couple dB of headroom. And by time I apply compression and things to make it, bring down my crest factor to say here's quiet and here's loud, and I'm finding that average of strong signal. I'm going to probably even have a little more headroom than that. Like my peaks may be -4, -3. So I'm safe in what I'm sending to the mastering engineer. I'm safe from clipping my plugins or my hardware. I'm printing perfection. Another question that I get is about gain staging subgroups, because I mix with subgroups, and I know a lot of us do. So let's just do this. Let's bring up 3 stereo auxes, and let's take our drums and bass. Let's just kind of do this so I can get them all together, because this is the way I actually do it on a day-to-day basis. And let's send those to drums and bass. There we go. So aux 1 is going to be our drums and our bass. So let's take all these other instruments and send them to guitars and keyboard. Well, there you go, bus guitars. We'll send them to bus guitars. Oh wait, that needs to be assigned to 1 and 2. So our inputs, let's go ahead and assign these before you get carried away and forget. So 1 was drums and bass. Number 2 was this one called, if I can make my mouse hold still, there we go, guitars. And then we got vocals right here. Let's assign those to bus Vox. We'll assign our input here to bus Vox. I develop a system to where, let's just turn this down, to where I'm in a sweet spot for analog on these buses as well. Because if I want to bring in the locomotive audio power mute right there on my guitars and keys, because that's a common thing that I do if I'm going to use that summing mixer up there. So let's just do this. Let's listen to drums and bass. And see, I'm peaking around -6, -5. Okay, perfect. Let's see what I'm doing here. Guitars and keys. There's analog 0. Pretty great, right?
If you're shouting your songs at the top of your lungs and you don't
There we go. So we're in a pretty good sweet spot. But what I sometimes do is I develop this system to where my drums are down a little bit. And I'll tell you why. And the reason I like to use aux faders here, I should tell you, instead of VCAs, it's more than just the level. It's the fact that I want to be able to process these. Maybe I want to patch in some compression, some saturation, some EQ on the guitars globally, or the keyboards globally, or the vocal.
The Planet Fitness Black Card. Access any location, bring a friend anytime.
You can count on Cox Health for the medical expertise you trust when it matters. You can count on Cox Health for the medical expertise you trust when it matters most. You can count on Cox Health for the medical expertise you trust when it matters most. Cox Health.
Whether you're on the job or at home, Harbor Freight has the air tools and compressors you need to get the job done right. From compressors for inflating, nailing, and stapling to automotive air tool use and more. Quality air tools, compressors, and accessories built to last at prices that can't be beat. Whatever you need, we've got it. Whatever you do it for less. Harbor Freight, your air tool and compressor destination.
What is the difference between a mastering compressor and a normal compressor? A mastering compressor and a normal mixing compressor are both tools for controlling dynamic range, but they are designed for different stages of production and have distinct characteristics. Purpose and application: normal mixing compressors used on individual tracks or submixes to shape, tone, control dynamics, and glue elements together within a mix. They add a noticeable sonic character and are often chosen for their color or attack release feel. Mastering compressors used on the final stereo mix to reduce overall dynamic range, glue the entire track together, and ensure consistency across playback systems. The goal is transparency, controlling dynamics without altering the mix's core character. Okay. So it's saying here that mostly keep your sub in mono for mastering. Makes sense to me. So, -6 decibels of headroom. Sub mono. Alright, y'all. I gotta tap out. But I think I met all my goals. Learned a fucking lot, a bunch, and I'm gonna come. I don't be live again today. I'm gonna be making beats and shit. Actually putting this this knowledge to work, you know. All right, y'all. I'll see you in the next one.